Martin Lipman and family in memory of his wife, Malka Chana Bas Pinchas. Friends of Herb Jeremiah, Tzvi Ben Zev. Friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel Ben Yaakov. Friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Meir. Bella and David Adler in memory of her father, Eliyahu Ben Yosef HaKohen. Those who were inspired by our Rebbitzin, Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Esther, Malka Bas Meshulam Yisachar. A Week of Learning by Jack Gilman in memory of his brother Zev Yosef Ben Yitzchak. Sharon and Michael Glass in memory of her mother Chaya Bas Avram Baruch. Isaac and Evelyn Blacher, and again in memory of Isser Ben Shmuel David, that's Isaac's father. A month of learning. Oh, I made a mistake. Those were weeks. Now I'm going back to months. I should have moved across, not down.
Sometimes they do.
It's very confusing, but they do that intentionally to make me confused. My wife talks to your wife and says, change it so he'll get confused. Friends and students of Rabbi Shalom Kornblum, Rav Shalom ben Mordechai, Susan and Ronald Podolsky, that's Ruvain, in memory of her father, Simcha Bunim ben Yehoshua, and in memory of her mother, Chaya Bas Avram Dov. Michael and Judy Peretsky, in memory of his mother, Rachel Bas Abram, and B. Pizer in memory of her father, Yisachar Dov ben Shmuel. We also have 2 days of learning today. Judy Fuchs in memory of her husband, Dov Ber ben Eliyahu, and Judy and Arikon in memory of their friend, Dov Fuchs, or Doev Fuchs. I don't know. I think it may be a typo. Dov Ber ben Eliyahu. Okay. All right, so
you need then the current one to announce the Shalashudas.
Shalashudas this Shabbos is Rebecca Witansky, and
that was last.
Oh well, then I have no idea.
Listen, before you go, children, May 17th at 4:15 at the grill at Albies. We'll have a seat.
Okay. To repeat. Where the Siyam on Maseches Sota is coming up, it will be Wednesday, May 17th at 4:15 p.m. at Century Grill, 415 May 17th at Century Grill. You will pay your waiter or waitress directly. However, we need you to turn in to Mel your name and how many people you are. Are you and your wife and your girlfriend, whatever it is. Well, we're learning Sota. So
Maybe just your girlfriend without your wife.
Okay. So.
And you can give it over to either Marty Engel or to Mordechai also.
Well, you only need 2, Marty and Mel. Okay. So we learned the day before yesterday that Yehuda and Yosef each were Mekadesh Shem Shemayim. Yosef Betzina, he did it in a private manner, and Yehuda Befarhesia in a public manner. Then we went through all the long midrashim on Yosef and related midrashim to show that Yosef and Mrs. Potiphar, and he declined her generous offer. So that was how he was Mekadesh Shem Shemayim privately. And now we're picking up at the bottom of Lamed Vav Amid Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Yehuda.
What?
2 lines from the bottom, the middle of the line.
That I think that's what I just said. No.
You just said.
Okay. In any event, 2 lines from the bottom. Okay. Yehuda Maihi. So now we're going back and picking up that thread. And we're asking, how was Yehuda Makadeh Shem Shemayim B'far Hesia? So when we learned it, Rabbi Green. Rabbi Green commented that perhaps it was the story.
What's going to happen in July?
Well, wait until we get to the 12 equals 98.
You got to deal with that, not me.
All right. Yeah, that's all right. In any event, so picking up how Yehuda was Mekadesh Shem Shemayim B'far Hesia, Kenny suggested perhaps it was by Tamar. And indeed, we learned elsewhere a medrash that Yehuda's honesty and willingness to admit that he made a mistake over there was what made him roy to have the Malchus in his family and his tribe. But the Gemara here gives a different example where it was considerably more before Hesia. It was in front of 3 million people. Okay, Desanya with a brisa. Now, Reb Meir frequently said, "Kisha'am the Yisrael al Hayam," when the Jews were facing the body of water that we call the Yam Suf. They, the desert on one side, the mountains on the other side, the Egyptian hordes galloping toward them. Okay, Hoyu Shvatim. All the tribes got very competitive with each other. One tribe said, I want to go into the water first. I want to go into the water first. So Kafetz Shvato Shel Binyamin, the tribe of Binyamin jumped up. Everybody's saying, I want to go first. I want to go first. And Binyamin doesn't say anything. He just leaps into the water. Now, because everybody knows a different version it is, so just hold your horses. We'll get there. Okay, so Binyamin jumped into the sea first. Shenemar, as to quote a pasuk, Sham Binyamin Sa'ir Binyamin was the youngest of the 12 brothers, and yet Roidem, he became the leader. So they apply that pasuk to he jumped into the water first. Al tikre Roidem, don't read it the way it's written, Roidem, Ella Rad Yom. If you stick a yud in, because yud sometimes are there and sometimes not, that would mean he went down, Rod, into the water. Okay? So, V'hoyu Sari Yehuda Rog Minoso. So Yehuda, who really wanted to go first, the leadership of the tribe of Yehuda, according to this medrash, pelted the Binyaminites with rocks. Okay? So they weren't very nice. So Yehuda here is like the villain. In a minute, we're going to see Yehuda is the hero. Shenemar, and we got a pasuk. Sare Yehuda rig mosam. They threw rocks at them. Lefikach. Now, flash forward 1,200 years. They built the Beis Hamikdash. When the territories were divvied up among the Shvatim, they were gerrymandered. They weren't squares. They were gerrymandered. And in this instance, Binyamin had a slim sliver of land that projected into the territory of Yehuda. And when they built the Beis Hamikdash, the Kodshe Kodshim, in the second step of the Heichel, or the third step of the Heichel, if you count the Ulam, was in Shevet Binyamin's sliver of land. So now this medrash informs us, Lefikach, Zacha Binyamin Hatzadik, the righteous Binyamin, Naaseh Ushpizachon Legavura, that he was given the schus of being the host of the Great One, of God, because the Shekhinah was in the Kodesh Kodashim. So according to this medrash, Binyamin went first and was rewarded by getting the Kodesh Kodashim, and Yehuda's behaved inappropriately. V'chein pischu shchein, and then it brings another pasuk, shenemar ubein pischa shochein, that God rested between his shoulders. Metaphorically, he carried God because his sliver of land had the Kodesh Kodashim. So Amar la Rav Yehuda, now I personally, with my perverted mind, I picked up that it was Rav Yehuda that defended Shevet Yehuda. Okay, that's just my own personal observation. Amar la Rav Yehuda says to Rav Yehuda, says to Rav Meir, Lo kach hayim, I say. You got the whole thing wrong. That's not how the story happened. Okay, Ela ze omer ein ani yored chila liyam. The Shvatim were afraid. The Egyptians are coming. The Yam Suf is impenetrable. And everybody says, I'm not going in there first. And the other Shevet says, I'm not going in there first. I'm not going in first. Kafetz Nachman ben Nachshon ben Aminadav. I turned the shin over, made it a mess. Nachshon ben Aminadav jumped up. Okay, v'yored liyam tchila, and he went into the water first. Shenemar, so vavuni b'kachash Ephraim b'mirma beis Yisrael. Ephraim put deception completely around me. The Yehuda od rod im kale, but Yehuda still associated with himself, ruled with Hashem. Okay, so that's the pasuk they bring to back up that Yehuda went first. The Allah of Meforish Kabbalah. So we have a Kabbalah, that means an ancient tradition of how this worked. Yehoshua, okay. He walked into the water. Now it uses the word nefesh, which often means soul, and indeed Art Scroll translates it like that. But it also means breath. The nefesh is expressed through breathing. When you die, the measure of cessation of life is cessation of respiration. So he walked into the water up to his nefesh, meaning up to his nostrils. Okay? Hoshiani Elokim kibo mayim ad nefesh. Save me, God, because I went in up to my nostrils in the water. Tabati bevan mitzula v'ein ma'amid, etc. I'm sinking into the mud, into the murk, and I can't find a foothold. In other words, I'm not able, there's no dry land underneath me to hold me up. So I'll tish pitanish shabayles mayim, and don't let the water sweep me away, the current sweep me away. Al tivra la'eni mitzula, don't let the water swallow me up, the depths swallow me up. And so that was the tefillah of Nachshon when he is up to his nostrils in water and sinking fast because he has no footing. So what did Moshe do? At that very moment, Moshe marich b'tefillah, he did himself a big, long davening. So Amar Lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so God says to Moshe, Yedidai Toivim Biyam, my beloved ones, meaning Nachshon, and perhaps some other Yehuda members, are drowning in the water. And all you can do is pray a lengthy prayer in front of me. So Moshe says, Omer lefon of Moshe says, Rabbeinu Shalom, ma biyadi lasos. What do I have the capability of doing? I'm not a lifeguard. I didn't take a Red Cross course. Amar Lo, the Rabbeinu Shalom says back to him, Diber al b'nei Yisrael v'yasau. Tell the rest of the Jews to go in also. In other words, let the people show they have a munah. Okay? V'ataharim es matcha. And you take your staff that you did all those miracles back in Egypt and hold it in your hand and v'noita es yadacha, and hold your arm out over the water. What? Charlton Heston. Okay. Lefikach. So, based on the fact that Nachshon in this version of the story went first and was willing to possibly die al Kiddush Hashem, and this is Perfahesia, because it was in front of every living Jew, right? So, Yehuda Lakad, okay, Zecha Yehuda Lasos Memshala B'Yisrael. Yehuda acquired the merit of having kingship come from Shevet Yehuda.
Show it now to the Knesset.
What?
In Israel now, they should show it to the Knesset that they can make peace.
Not my department. Come daven here at 7:45 next Friday. Okay? Shenemar, we have a pasuk that says, Hoysa Yehuda Lakadsho, Yehuda was sanctified, Yisrael Mam Shiloisav, and his tribe gained the right to be the rulers over Israel. Ma ta'am hoysa Yehuda l'kadsha Yisrael mam shalav. What was the rationale, or what happened historically, that Yehuda was sanctified before Hesia and gained the right to have the malchus in his shevet? Mishum the hayam ra of Yanus, because the water saw Nachshon Kaviyachal in the water and it drained. Okay, so Nachshon survived. Okay, so in any event, Rabbi Yehuda reports that there is another medrash. I don't like the Binyamin medrash. He says to Reb Meir, I have a better medrash because it explains why Shevet Yehuda has the Malchus, and it also shows Yehuda was Mekadesh Shem Shemayim in Befarhesia, in where there was no possible greater Kiddush L'Shem Shemayim, because every single Jew in the whole universe was present at that event. Okay. Now, since we're digging, we've been a whole bunch of midrashim, we're going to keep going. Okay, and we're now going to go back to the business of Har Grizim and Har Evel. And we're going to go through it, and we're going to give multiple explanations of what actually occurred there. Apparently, it's not quite so simple as the first reading and as the Mishnah would have us believe. Tanya, we have a brisa. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov Aimer, Rabbi Lezer says, "Efsher lomar levi lamata." This addresses something Sidney raised the other day. It's impossible to tell us that Shevet Levi was down in the valley between the mountains. Okay? Because Shekvar Nemer Lamaila, because in Devarim, there's a pasuk that tells us, Moshe tells Yehoshua, when you get to Har Evel and Har Griza, you go put 6 tribes here and you put 6 tribes there, up on them. Al. The word you have to keep in mind is the word al, which at this moment we're translating upon. So there's a pasuk openly that says that the Levim were on the mountain. But it's equally impossible to say that they were up there. Because we have another pasuk that says the Kahanim and the Levim were in the valley. So how do you handle that? Okay, so what happened really? Ziknei kahuna levia lamata, the leadership of kahuna, which I found a little difficult because there weren't even a dozen kahanim yet. But maybe it's 40 years. There certainly are not a lot of kahanim, but in any event, the leadership of the kahanim, and in this version, the leaders, the heads of the families of Leviim were in the valley, Lamata, in the valley, Vahashar Lamaila, but everybody else in the Leviim, and maybe even some Kahanim, were up on the mountain because Kahanim are part of Shevet Levi. Okay, that's one version. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, he has another version of how the Levium were separated. If you look elsewhere in the Torah, it tells us that up till age 30, actually up until age 20, Levium had nothing to do with the Beis Hamikdash. From 20 to 30, they go to Levi school, okay, where they learn the songs and how to play an instrument if that's his assigned role. What they learn how you carry the kalim from place to place if you have to do that. Then from 30 to 50, the Levium actually serve, and then at age 50 they retire. Okay, so only according to Rabbi Yehoshua, only a subset of male Levium between 30 and 50 were in the valley, and all the younger and all the older and all the women and children were on the mountain. Okay? He expresses it, Kol harui l'shares lamata, all who were fit to serve with the clay shares were in the valley. Vahashar lamaila, everybody else was up on the mountain. Okay, that's what? Younger and older. The Zadis and the Einiklach were up on the mountain. So only 30 to 50 were down. That's Rabbi Yehoshua. Now, Rebbe has a whole different take on this Hargreason business. Okay, Rebbe Omer Elu v'Elu lamata heinamdin. Nobody actually climbed the mountain. 6 Shvatim moved on the plain close to Hargreason. 6 other Shvatim moved on the plain close to Har Evel. Okay. V'chafchu pneihem l'kalpei Hargreason. Some of them then, when the Kohanim and Leviim with the Aaron in the middle. When the brachas and the klalas were recited, everybody at the base of the mountain and in the valley turned in one direction or the other, depending if it was a bracha or a klal. Okay? So, everybody turned and faced Hargreason, the paschal bracha, and then they said a bracha. Now, just take note that it's in the singular, okay? And then kalpei har evel, what? Bebracha, the bracha. It's singular. The word bracha is singular. We're going to pick that up later. Okay, that's why I pointed it out. Oh, and then they all kalpei har evel. They all turned to har evel. Upaschu b'klala, and they began the curse. And again, note that it's in the singular. So now the Gemara asks a question of Rebbe. I pointed out earlier the word al, which is normally translated upon or above. Okay? My al. So, Rebbe, what do you do with the word al?
I want to ask a question.
Yeah.
Did they say all the brachas one and then turn to?
We'll see that in a few minutes. Hold it. I pointed out one. I'll give you what's it called where you break?
They said a bracha, they turn to that bracha.
Correct. But it is in the singular. And the fact is, there's going to be opinion in a minute that they did a bracha and its corresponding klala. Then they went back and did a bracha and its corresponding klala. That's one opinion, and that seems to be the operative opinion. So in any event, my al, what do you, Rebbe, do with the word al? Al b'samach. Rebbe answers the word al sometimes means close to, next to, nearby. Okay? Kedesanya, and I can prove it from a baisa. Nasata al hamareches levona zaka, place the frankincense, which is a levona, finely chopped up zaka, al the mareches. So we're talking about the shulchan in the Mishkan and then in the Beis HaMikdash, where there were 6 loaves, one upon the other. There were bars between in stacks. And then the levona is al. So sometimes in a picture, they show the levona, a little pot of levona on the top of the stack. But the halacha actually is the levona is on the shulchan itself next to the stack. So that's how Rebbe handles that. Rebbe Omer al b'samach. In certain contexts, the word al means next to or near or on the side of. Ata Omer al b'samach. So Gemara challenges him. You're going to tell me that there are cases where al does not mean on top, it means next to? Oh, eina ela al mamish. Maybe it really means on above or on top. Kishahu oimer, like the pasuk says, v'sachoisa al ha'aron. You should put a screen on the aron. Okay? Now, have omer al samach. There you have to say it means next to it because the parochis was on the top. They didn't put a screen horizontally on the top. They put a screen vertically next to it. So now we have 2 opinions, 3 opinions, 4 opinions, 3 opinions. All the Levium, except the very leaders of each of the families, were on the mountain, they were on the bottom. Or all the working Levium were on the bottom and the young and old were up on the top. And the ones in tutorial programs for Levium. And nobody was on the mountain. They were all near the mountains. And then you have to pick your way. The Levium were split up. Okay. So now we get to sit. Hachvu Penehem Lakalpe Har Grizim, their faces turned towards Har Grizim, Opaschu Baracha, and they started with a bracha. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis teach. Now, if you go back to Devarim and you look up where Moshe tells Yehoshua to do all this when they get to Har Grizim and Har Evel, you'll note that there it only lists the curses, because the brachas are the reciprocals. You take out the word, you add the word don't, and they become the brachas. You will also note that there are a bunch of brachas that are very specific. I'm going to pick the example of do not put a stumbling block before the blind. Okay, blessed is he who does not put a stumbling block before the blind. Cursed is he who does put a stumbling block before the blind. All right, so, but at the end, there's a general bracha. Blessed are those who keep the Torah. Cursed are those who do not keep the Torah. Now, if you can hold cup and remember that there's this specifics plus a generality, we're going to play a weird math game that I'm going to do the best I can. Okay. Baruch Baklal, there was, now it's not the beginning, but it's at the end, a generalized bracha keeping the Torah. Baruch Baprat. And then there's a list of individual brachas with very specific dinim. Don't put a fake marker, don't put a stumbling block in front, don't fool around with somebody else's wife, etc. Arur B'chlal, the Arur B'prat. And similarly, amongst the curses, there are the reciprocal curses plus the generality curse. Now, in addition, there is a pasuk that says you should learn Torah in order to learn a mitzvah, in order to teach the mitzvah, and in order to perform the mitzvah. So that's three things. There is yet another pasuk that says, Shomer mitzvosai, guard my mitzvahs. Now, how do you guard a mitzvah? So, especially when we already had learn it, teach it, do it. But Shomer is something else. So the Marashal, at least, suggests that Shomer means to constantly review. In other words, you do chazara. You learn what?
Fence around.
No. Maybe that's an answer, but not all mitzvahs have a siyug. All right, but the Marashal says to repeat it over, to relearn it, so you maintain it. And furthermore, Shomer here means when you review it, not just those words, but all of the implications. So coming back to my example bracha of do not put a stumbling block. So included in your learning of that would be, do not encourage someone to do something wrong. Do not fake news. Do not post something that's untrue that someone might believe. Do not, and the Shulchan Aruch actually brings, if you're the only purveyor, I'm going to use cigarettes as an example. If you're the only store in town that sells cigarettes, you cannot sell cigarettes to a Jew. Now, there's a loophole. It mentions if there's another store on the other side of the river, you can't sell cigarettes. But if there are two stores in town that sell cigarettes, then you could. So the simple understanding of don't trip a blind person gets expanded. And even in the expansion, there are exceptions. So Shomer means to do all of that so you get all the implications of that mitzvah. Okay? So that's the concept here. So Lilmod, Lalamed, Lishmor, Ulasos. We have to learn, to teach, to shomer, and to perform. Okay? So that means Arba. Now there are actually Meforshim that say, when they did the brachas, they said, blessed is he who learns Torah. Blessed is he who teaches Torah. Blessed is he who is shomer Torah. Blessed is he who performs the mitzvah. Then cursed is he, and they went through and they said it 4 ways. So Arba, 4 brachas, turn the page. Arba, 4 curses, Harishmona. So each strophe was 8. Okay? Now, Shmono Shmona, 8 plus 8, because we had the specific and we had the generality. So again, there are Meforshim who said that the last of the brachas and klalas was repeated over and over in between the others. Other Meforshim say, no, it was only at the end. So we have all these permutations of what actually happened. But anyway, Shmona Shmona, Hare Sheish Esrei, that comes out to 16. Okay? Now, God, the Torah was given, and it gets very tricky. The Torah was initially given at Har Sinai. Okay? Moshe gave the world's longest sermon, took a whole month, before he died, just before they crossed. Almost all the mitzvahs were repeated by Moshe. This was in his own words. That's why there are variants in how some in the Aseret Dibrits, for example. God did not dictate Dvarim. That was Moshe's review. So that's twice. Now there are opinions that Yehoshua read the whole Torah over here, or maybe he just did the Aseret Dibros over here, or maybe he read a list of the 613 mitzvahs. There are various opinions, but in any event, Har Eiffel, the Har Grizim, was a third reprise of giving the Torah. Okay? So based on that, we have the following. Cain B'Sinai, the same thing of the multiplying each of the rules by 4 and then, or maybe by 8 at Har Sinai, the Cain Ba'arvos Moab. And similarly, when Rosha recited Dvarim at the plain of Moab. So now we have 16 times 3. But first we have to prove it. Shenemar Ela Divrei Habris Asher Tziva Hashem Es Moshe. These are the words of the commandments, that the contract between man and God that Moshe did at Sinai. Uksiv Ushmartem Es Divrei Habris Hazos. And this was at Elone Mamre. So I'm sorry, at Moab, and the word bris is used again. And then the mountains case has the word bris. We make a gezei reshava. So 16 times 3. Okay, Nimsa, it comes out, Arvim Ushmona Brisos. There were 48 contractual elements. I'll call mitzvah regarding each and every one of the 613 mitzvahs. Each one has 48 components, because there was 4 plus 4, 4 do them, 4 don't do them, or 4 don't do them, 4 do them, and then at 3 locations. And so this is it's what? No, each time was a little bit different. At Har Sinai, it was the Aseret Dibros. Okay? In the plain of Moab, it was Moshe giving it again in his own words in the world's longest sermon. And over here, Yehoshua did something, we don't know exactly what, to sort of repeat it. Plus, we know the brachas and the curses, but we don't know exactly how it was done. Yes. He was repeating the same mitzvahs, yeah. So by doing this math game, we come up, what they're trying to do is trying to reinforce how significant every mitzvah is, even if they seem insignificant. Okay, people who shave. I shave, what's the big deal? So, well, you're not allowed to use a razor. Okay, but I bought the best Norelco and I have a clean shave. The fact of the matter is, I'm not criticizing anybody, but if you use the best Norelco, you're violating the halacha. Norelco has a division. Well, it's all 613 mitzvahs given in some manner. And you violate one of the mitzvahs, it's as if you violate 48 mitzvahs. Look, I'm just reading the words and trying to explain them, okay? No, that's also true. There were different variants. In any event, so you have 16, which is the 8 and 8, plus 16, which is a Har Sinai, plus 16, which was Moshe before he died, gives you 48. Okay, now, of course, you can't just take that on faith, right? Reb Shimon might say Hargerizim. Reb Shimon says no. What happened at Hargerizim was significantly different. I agree with the 48, but I have to take out the Hargerizim case because it was not dissimilar. Okay? Omachnis oil moed lebamidbar. Okay. We were about to learn a machlokes of what exactly happened at Har Sinai. Some say God said at Har Sinai, "Thou shalt not kill," but I have no idea what that means. Can I have a war? So you have to go through the whole Torah, and you have to find psukim that tell us sometimes you kill intentionally. Sometimes you sneak up on a guy and bash him over your head. Sometimes you drop a stone when you're redoing your roof and it kills somebody. It's manslaughter, it's not murder. Sometimes it's a goel who is redeeming the manslaughter to his relative, and it's not murder at all. Now, there's a machlokes if the entire Torah was given to Moshe on Har Sinai, or if the pratim came up as they were coming up when we read them each parsha. So one says that everything was given on Har Sinai, and someone else said, no, the basic points were on Har Sinai, but you had to have God talking to Moshe in the Oel Moed for, well, he cut out for 38 years, but for 2 years. And the filling ins are all part of what the mitzvah is. So that didn't happen at Har Gerizim. So Rev,
problem with this here. Isn't there a problem between the Rambam and the Ramban?
they're probably, well, they're no, there's not. They are expressing what they perceive to be a problem here. They're 1,000 years later, so you can't say this is their problem.
613 mitzvahs were different.
There were different people wrote different lists. That's correct. Because
which is okay.
They're not really different. The Rambam gives writes an introduction in which he explains his methodology. If a mitzvah is a cluster of mitzvahs, for instance, you shech the cow, you catch the blood, you walk to or run to the mizbeach, you spritz. So one list might put those as 4, and one might put that as 1. So the differences between the various lists, Rambam gives a crib sheet of how you can interpret his list. Others use different methodologies and come up with different mitzvahs. Everybody agrees there are 613. And everybody agrees that at least 2 were said aloud at Har Sinai, so we get Moshe we have a gematria that Moshe gives Dave 611, but actually that's not true either, because one of the mitzvahs was given to Aaron, not to Moshe. So there are all these complexities. And here we're only delving a little, we're just touching the surface of the complexities. I'm trying to fill in a little so we understand. In any event, so Reb Shimon eliminates Hargrizim, and he says that you have to add the discussions between Rabban Shalom and Moshe Kaviyachol in the Oil Moed during the time God gave the rest of the Torah, or filled out the Torah, however you want to say it, to Moshe. Okay, now we come to the core dispute. Rabbi Akiva Aimer, Klolos, I skipped?
Prove to Dahani Tanah.
Yeah. What?
He said, Machnis Ohel Shabamidbar.
Okay, it was Sanya, Rabbi Shmuel Aimer. I thought I did this. Klolos Nemra B'Sinai, at Mount Sinai.
Go back.
Where?
Oh, Moe was ready to finish. Motzi Hargrizim.
Okay. Shenemar Ela Divrei Habris Asher Tziva Hashem. I'm going all the way back to Moshe. Okay. Now, Rabbi Shimon Meitzei Hargrizim v'Har Eivel. He eliminates from the set of three Hargrizim and Har Eivel, but he replaces it Machnis Oil Moed Midbar with the discussions. I thought I did this with the discussions of between Moshe and the Rabbeinu Shalom in the Midbar. O Plikta Dahani Tana, and Reb Shimon, who says that it was spread out, and the Tanakama, who we could read into his words that it was all done at once, have the same argument as the following Tanayim in the following Brisa. The Sanya, we have a Brisa, Rabbi Shmuel Aimer, Klalos Nemru B'Sinai, the general rules were given at Sinai. I gave the example of thou shalt not kill. Upratos B'Oel Moed, but filling in all the details and all the punishments, etc., were during the stretched out period where God and Moshe had discussions, Kaviyachol, in Oil Moed. Okay, Rabbi Akiva disagrees. Rabbi Akiva Omer Klalos Upratos Nemru B'Sinai. The whole shebang was given at Har Sinai, and it was between Moshe and God. God decided to dictate, and Moshe wrote down each section of the Torah when God felt it was appropriate. And they're roughly, but not always in chronological order. Sometimes they skip something to connect this with that, and then they go back and fill it in so it's not missing. It gets complicated, but according to Rabbi Akiva, at least the first time around, Moshe got the whole shebang on Har Sinai, and that's why it took 40 days times 3. Okay, which is again another set of 3. Yeah.
Just a quick comment. In classical rabbinic thought, okay, which was carried over into the academic community for those who teach us, whether it's Gemara, Chumash, whatever. There are two lines. They point to this example of what's called Torah Sinai versus Torah min Hashamayim. Torah Sinai was Rabbi Akiva's view. Everything was given at one shot. Torah min Hashamayim, okay, was the view, and this is again traditional Mefarshim, Gemara, etc.
Yeah,
Torah min Hashamayim was the other view.
Yeah, but they distort because
I'm not
Torah.
talking about the academic. I'm just simply saying that when you look at this, here's the basis for those views that say no, certain principles were given at Sinai, and then the details were filled in throughout the rest of it. So I just wanted to point that out so that when you if you're reading other sources or other material,
which are
you see-
apicurses.
you see that the origin of these two concepts are here in the Gemara, and that's what carried through in later generations of Meforshim, okay, in terms of their understanding of.
However, the so-called scholars distort what
that
it
we're not-
means,
we're not
because
going
Rabbi
back-
Akiva says everything was on Har Sinai. Rabbi Yishmael says the major, every principle was on Har Sinai, but they filled in some of the pratim as they traveled through the Midbar. But it was all directly from Hashem to Moshe.
No, both Torah
Okay.
Sinai and Mina Shemayim reflected from.
Now, so where do you say get? So we have, okay, and now both agree. Both Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael both agree. Nishtalshu be'arvos Moab. That Sefer Devarim is a reprise of the first 4 volumes, which God dictated, and Sefer Devarim was written entirely without God's involvement by Moshe. This was his big sermon. And there's a discussion, how did he write about his own death? So one school of thought is he did it with tears in his eyes. He anticipated his death and wrote it himself. The other school of thought is the last 10 psukim were written by Yehoshua. All right. So now we just figured out a different way of looking at where the 3 came from, and we introduced the machlokes between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva. So now we're finishing, going back from the interruption, and we're finishing the Braisa. V'ein lachol kol davar mitzvah u'mitzvah sheksuva b'Torah. There's not a single mitzvah in the Torah. Ella nichrisu aleha arba imu shmona brisos, that doesn't have 48 seals on it, because of the repetition of the word bris in various psukim, and we did the math earlier, how we got to the 48. Now, Reb Shimon does not agree with that. Reb Shimon multiplies it much more. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda ish kfar akva omer b'shum Rabbi Yishimon. So Rabbi Shimon, the Amora, quotes Rabbi Shimon the Tana. Ein locha mitzvah shekasva b'Torah. It's not a single mitzvah inscribed in the Torah. Shelo nivrisu olecha. Nichrisu alecha, that does not have a bunch of seals, and we'll work through it now. Arba imushmona brisos, the same 48 of the math we recently did, times shall shesh meos elef v'shlosh alfayim chomesh meos v'chamishim, times 603,550, which was the number of individuals, each of whom is mechuyev to keep the brachas, to keep the mitzvahs. But it's more than that, and we'll see right now. Omer Rebbe, L'divrei Rebbe Shimon ben Yehuda, ish kfar aklo, Omer Rishum Rebbe Shimon, who quotes Rebbe Shimon, Ein lochal kol mitzvah shebetayra shelo nichrisu aleha arba imushmona brisos, the 48 seals, shel shesh meos elef v'shloishes alfayim v'chomesh meos v'chamishim, times the number of Jews that there were, male Jews alive at that time. Nimsa v'chol echad v'echad me Yisroel sheish meos elef v'shloshim alfayim v'chomesh meos chamishim. It's the number of Jews that were alive at Har Sinai squared. And and the Gemara will explain. My benayhum, what is the distinction between not squaring the number of Jews and squaring the number of Jews? In any event, you have a humongous number. I actually tried to do it on my phone and it couldn't do it. It was too big a number. Okay, so here is the machloikes between them. Amar Reb Misharshia, Arva va'arva ikabenai. Whether we know from this, Kol Yisrael Arevim zebuzeh. But do the Arevim have a Arevim? Okay, I'll try and explain that. I do something wrong. Everybody knows Heshi's my buddy. Okay, so Heshi would have a greater responsibility to give me a teichecha than anybody else, because Heshi's my buddy. Now, Kenny sees me doing something wrong, and that would be the end of it, according to Not Square. Kenny sees me do something wrong. He's afraid if he comes to me directly, I will not accept it with the love he means to offer it. So he goes to Heshi and he says, Heshi, I'm an Orev for you and you're an Orev on Burr. Go tell Burr he's screwing up. So if you accept that every single Jew has an obligation to warn every other Jew that he has an obligation to handle the issue with the guy who's doing something wrong, then you get the number of Jews squared. Yeah, but that's only one level. I said that 2 times already. Kol Yisrael Arevim zeh is only one opinion. The other opinion is Kol Yisrael Arevim va'arevim zeh. Okay, so that's that. Now we're going weiter. We're all, yeah.
No, just the point. The number comes out to be 364 billion.
You got the times 48? You got to multiply that by 48. You got to square it and then multiply by 48. That's when my machines didn't do it anymore. All right, in any event. But so the point of this is, whether you understand the 48, whether you understand the squaring or the don't bother squaring, only multiply. What this Gemara is trying to tell us is that the intimacy of our relationship with the Rabbeinu Shalom is that the most insignificant violation of something you know. Now, remember, if you're a shogeg, you're not responsible on the same madrega, but you're supposed to learn it, and I'm going to put it out of order and be shomer, review it, and do all the expansions of it, and teach it to your family, and then do it. That was the core of how we eventually got the 48. So every single thing we do either brings us closer or separates us from our Jewishness, from our relationship with the Rabbeinu Shalom. And that's why it behooves us not to take our Yiddishkeit with casually. I had a Rosh Yeshiva of Yitzchak Fegelstock. I was his balagula. I used to drive him around. So we were coming from a doctor's appointment. We were walking up the stairs to the base medrash, and they said Baruch Hu. So he grabbed me and he pulled me into his office. He said, Rebbe, they just said Baruch Hu. Can we just go in? We can say Birchas and Kriya Shema and Daven B'tzibur. So his answer was astonishing. His answer was, davening is only midrabanan, but being mavazer the Rabbeinu Shalom, by having the chutzpah to walk in late to davening, That's ke'en diraisa. From that moment on, I was never late to a minyan in my life. On the one or two occasions where there was a lot of traffic, something, I davened in the hall. I did not go in. So this is a really, and that's just a tiny little example of me. But we all have to be conscious of our Yiddishkeit because we see the significance of each mitzvah. All right, let's go weiter. Doresh Rabbi Yehuda ben Nachmani, Miturgamane, the Reb Shimon ben Lakesh, Reb Shimon's Miturgaman, made the following statement. Kola parsha kula lo neemra ella b'saynef v'noyefes. He says, I see in the whole list of brachas and in the whole list of klolos a connection to sexual immorality. Okay, now putting a stumbling block. We'll go back to my stumbling block. Well, I entice some woman to fool around with me. That's putting a stumbling block and linking it to sexual improper behavior. But he gives another example. Orur ha'ish asher ya'aseh pesel masaka, etc. Anyone, cursed is a person who creates a carved deity figure or a cast deity figure. Okay? But orur sagile. Now, just a minute. If you're telling me that all the mitzvahs are an intimate relationship between me and God, how can you say that a simple curse is good enough for someone who violates that the very core principle there's one God? But orur sagile, is just a curse good enough for him? Ela zehabo al ha'erva v'hoili. Okay. He, somewhere in his lineage, somebody committed sexual immorality. Okay. And a kid came out. Okay. And that kid is epis a mamzer. V'hoilech leben of deikachavim. So this mamzer can't find a Jewish girl to marry because a Jewish girl's not allowed to marry a mamzer. So he goes to college and he finds a shiksa and she takes him home for Xmas and he winds up doing avodah zarah. And the core rationale of how come he's doing avodah zarah is he wants to associate with people and the Jews won't let him associate with them because something his grandmother did. Okay, and he goes, you could do all of them in that way. Okay, so arurin avi ve'imo shel zeh. So when we say he's cursed are his ancestors who did the immorality that practiced the znus that leads him to become a mamzer, and therefore him to go to college and pick up a shiksa. Okay. Tana Rabbanan, another issue with the curses. Nosata es habracha al har grizim v'es haklala v'ar eib. Okay, Ma Talmud Lomer, what does this teach us? Sid, you asked this earlier. Okay, im lalamech bracha al har grizim v'klala v'har evel, that you go. If you're telling me that it simply means the curses are look this way or be on that mountain, or the brachas are this way or be on that mountain, that we already learned. So what is it teaching me now? Hare kvar nemar, we already said that. Ella ya'amdu levarech es ha'am al har, what? Ella ya'amdu where? All right, Kvar Nemer, it says, Eila ya'amdu levorech al es ha'am, you shall stand and bless the people al har grizim, on the Grizim mountain, Uksiv, and it says in the next pasuk, V'ela ya'amdu al haklala bahar evel. And you should recite, they should stand and you recite the curse on Har Evel. And again, they're in the singular. Ella. So what this comes to teach us is a couple of things. One, lahakdim bracha l'klal. First you do the bracha, and then only then do you do the klala. So Yachol Yehu Kol HaBrachos Kademis L'Klalos, Sid's question. Maybe you do the list of brachas and then turn the other way and do the list of curses. No. Talmud Lomar, bracha in the singular, the klala in the singular. Bracha achas kademis l'klala. You say one bracha, then you say the corresponding curse, then you go back and say the second bracha, then you say the corresponding curse, etc., etc. The aim, call her brachas kademis l'klalos, but you do not do all the brachas first and then the klalos. Lahakish bracha klala lama l'chok, to make a hekesh between the brachas and the klalas to teach you the following. One, ma klala leviim, just as the leviim who are in the middle, depending on how you learn it, recite the curse. Af bracha the leviim, the same leviim recite the bracha. Ma klala b'kol, since the curses must be shouted by the leviim in the middle, so that 3 million people can hear them. B'kal ram, okay. Af bracha b'kal ram. So too the brachas have to be shouted so that everybody can hear them. Ma klala b'lashon kodesh, just as the curses must be in Hebrew. Af bracha b'lashon kodesh, so too the blessings must be in Hebrew. Ma klala b'klal uprat, just as the curse has a specific as well as a general, and this is where some say that they repeated the last one each time. Af bracha b'klal uprat, so too the list of brachas have the last line, which is either a reprise of all of them or repeated serially as you recite all of them. Ma klala elu v'elu oinin v'yomin amen. Just as everybody had to say amen to the curses, af bracha elu v'elu oinin v'yomin amen. So too with each of the brachas, they all recited amen. Now, Baruch Hashem, we finished several blot of Agadata, and we're up to a Mishnah, which I'll leave for Rabbi Green with a different spelling. I'm sorry it took so long, but if I had just translated, nobody would have gotten any sense of what was going on. So I had to be a little bit more. I was up half the night. I said, take them outside.